Council. I am Councillor Catherine Grandon, Chairman of Babergh District Council, and I will be chairing the meeting today. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please turn your telephones off. Yes. So, starting at the beginning, toilets are situated outside the meeting room, opposite the stairs. Cold water is also available in the breakout area outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meet on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you are told it's safe to do so. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you'll be deemed by the council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting, you are also consenting to being filmed by the council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Before I move to the agenda, although I have already made my declaration of acceptance of office before the proper officer, I would like to restate it before council and take this opportunity of saying a few words. I, Catherine Grandon, having been elected to the office of Chairman of the Council, hereby declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to be guided by the Suffolk Local Code of Conduct in the performance of my functions in that office. I was not able to attend the annual meeting, but I particularly wanted to make my declaration in front of you, fellow councillors, officers, and the public. I regard the office as important, and it means a lot that you have voted me into this position again. Thank you, councillors. First, I want to offer huge thanks and congratulations to Councillor Adrian Osborne, who has done such an excellent job as Babergh Chairman. Councillor Osborne carries out his duties with humour, thoughtfulness and professionalism, and I know he would have represented our council at civic events with dignity. I regret that I was unable to offer Councillor Osborne all the assistance I would like to have proffered as his vice, but I know he accomplished a successful job under sometimes difficult circumstances following on from the pandemic, and managed to hand over a very generous cheque to his charity, the Kurnos Centre. Well done, Adrian. You're a hard act to follow. I have been privileged to sit in this chair before, but my last term, it was rather different to this. I remember coming into Endeavour House in the middle of the lockdown to take my first online full council meeting. Now it all seems quite simple and almost normal. But in 2020, it was rather a surreal and challenging experience, as we did not know if it was going to work. And it was a bit experimental. Sometimes there were around 60 attendees. And of course, the ball I was planning was cancelled. I had a reduced donation to my charities, and representing the council at civic events naturally ceased. One positive aspect was that I was able to look forward to seeing the governance team in person on council nights. That is a long time ago now. I'm so pleased that we are more or less back to normal, and that Councillor Osborne was able to enjoy a slightly more relaxed period as chairman. And I'm particularly grateful to you, my fellow councillors, for giving me this further opportunity as chair. And of course, it gives me a perfect excuse to buy new outfits and get out there and proudly represent the council. I'm also delighted that Councillor Derek Davis has been elected as my vice chair. I know we will work together very well, and he has already represented Babergh at 2 civic events that I was unable to attend and provided me with other support. Thank you, Derek. Some may have noticed that I have not been very visible since last September. I would like to thank my fellow councillors and officers who have in their own and different ways demonstrated their care and concern. My illness was certainly a shock to me, and the support of my husband, Roger, friends, Hadley community, councillors and officers kept me going, along with knowing I had an invitation to a royal garden party waiting in the inbox. Which brings me to my chosen charity, the Ipswich Hospital Blossom Appeal. Like most people in the fortunate position of choosing an appeal to support, I am choosing one with personal connection. I have chosen the Blossom Appeal in part to say thank you for the amazing work the NHS does, but also to raise awareness of the incredible service the Ipswich Hospital Breast Team offer to families across the county. I have first-hand experience of the fantastic care, kindness and expertise offered. They have been and are a real source of support, not just to the women and men facing breast cancer and their loved ones too. There are so many different aspects in dealing with and fighting breast cancer, and this new breast care centre will support women and men across Babergh and wider Suffolk by bringing all these different elements of breast care under one roof. I now realise that cancer affects so many people, and it really is something that is important to talk about. While I realise that some of you have been very kind by not wanting to raise the subject, I have made the decision not to avoid talking about breast and other cancers. Once we remove the taboo and embarrassment, we help to raise awareness, remind people to check themselves, and raise funds. The Blossom Appeal is raising funds for the new dedicated £6.2 million breast care centre at Ipswich Hospital, which will bring together the breast clinic, the imaging department and breast screening for the first time. While the building work has already started, fundraising is still needed to complete the work. The race is now on to raise the final £500,000 to ensure every breast care patient will have the best possible experience when they come to the hospital. I'm planning at least one event which you will hear about in due course. But you don't have to wait until then if you've been keen to donate right away. But maybe wait until after the meeting. Karen Sayer has set up a Just Giving page, and you simply search Babergh once you're on the Just Giving site. Thank you, Alistair, for your early donation. That was quick off the mark. Finally, thank you all again for your thoughtfulness while I have been ill and for voting me as chairman. Let's have a good, positive final year of this term and get done all that we need to achieve for our communities, as this is why we all stood as councillors in 2019. Thank you. Thank you. Can I move to the agenda now, please? Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I have received apologies for absence from Councillors Carpendale, Creswell, Holt and Newman.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest by councillors. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. Item 3, paper BC 22-5, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on 22nd March 2022 for accuracy only. Should that be May? That should be May, sorry. May 2022 for accuracy only. Are there any issues with accuracy? Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Jan Osborne, thank you. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bryn Hurren, thank you. Can you raise your hands if you're prepared to favour the minutes, please? Support the minutes, please. That's carried, thank you. Announcements now from the Chairman of the Leader, paper BC 22-6. I have a few words I wanted to say. First, I refer you to paper BC 22-6 for noting. And I also wanted to mention that I was at Suffolk Day, the launch of Suffolk Day today at Franwion Castle. It was a really wonderful event, and it made you realise why we all love living in this county. It was very well attended, lovely warm weather, and you might have heard it on the radio this morning. And it was also, the same event was used to award the Suffolk Medal, which is the highest award that Suffolk can give as a county. It was presented by the Lord Lieutenant of Suffolk, and there were 5 recipients today. So it was a really lovely event, and well represented by other leaders and chairs in the county. And secondly, I'd also like to draw members' attention to the fact that it's Armed Forces Day on Thursday. And as a Hadley member, I'm very proud to say that one of the main events is happening on Thursday in Hadley. And I'd be delighted if as many of you can come as possible. The Armed Forces Day event takes place at 4:30 in the marketplace, and it gives us a chance to all say thank you to our forces. And I'd love to see you in Hadley if you're able to come. I'd now like to move on and invite Councillor Ward to make his announcements. Thank you, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It really is good to see you back. It's been a busy month for me. It started on the 1st with an invitation to the official opening of the first phase of the new market in Great Yarmouth. The total project cost is £4.6 million, partly funded by the council, but also with future High Streets Fund support. The town is bustling and thriving, having had a bumper tourism season last year due to travel restrictions, and expecting similar this summer. It is a bit galling, though, that they are Category 1 for the Levelling Up Fund, which they hope to take advantage of, while we languish in Category 3. And on the evening of the 1st, I was invited to attend a major road accident training exercise by the Suffolk Fire and Rescue Service at Assington Autos. This was their biggest training drill in 2 decades, and it was very interesting to see the detail and complexity that goes into a response like this, and also to see the variety of equipment that they can draw on to help the victims and save lives. Like many of you, I attended several Jubilee events in my ward, all of which were very well attended and enjoyable. The weather threatened on the Sunday, but it did remain dry, if a little chilly. We had about 200 at the Polstead Beacon Lightning on a warm Thursday evening in an idyllic location with views across to Stoke-by-Nayland where we could see their beacon. On the 6th of June, along with Councillor Davis, I was invited to the mast lowering ceremony at HMS Ganges. After several years of inactivity, this site is now on the way to being redeveloped into a vibrant new community with residential, commercial, retail and leisure facilities. The mast will be renovated and returned to its position at the centre of the site. Later, I watched the women's tour speed through Raiden in a slight drizzle at lunchtime as I headed for Shimpling to see Mount Farm Vineyard with Councillor Holt and Michelle Gordon. They have a great idea for a tourism theme linking all the vineyards along the Stour Valley. This would sit well with the artistic and heritage offerings at Babergh. On Thursday last week, I attended the preview of the What's Next for Sudbury exhibition. A lot of work was put into this, and it is gratifying to know that it was so well attended over the 3 days it was on. There were a total of 442 visitors, comprising members of the public, business representatives, and county, district and town councillors. We've had a huge amount of positive feedback, and the online survey for this is open until the 18th of July. On Friday evening last week, I attended the official opening of the Sudbury Innovation Lab in Babergh. This is part of our Innovate Local initiative and offers businesses a co-working space, access to cutting-edge technologies, business support services, funding advice, and network opportunities in the heart of the town, and it opened to businesses yesterday. Next week, I'll be attending the LGA annual conference in Harrogate with Councillor McCraw. This is the first time this has been held as a physical event since 2019, and I am looking forward to seeing many of my colleagues in person for the first time in a long while. I'll provide a summary of what took place on my return. I just want to take a few minutes to let you know about the Net Zero Carbon Toolkit. This was commissioned by local authorities in Oxfordshire and funded by the LGA Housing Advisors Programme and has been made available to be adapted and shared by other local authorities. The Suffolk Climate Change, Environment and Energy Board has taken the opportunity to publish it for the county, and earlier this year, Suffolk Public Sector Leaders Group approved its county-wide use. It has been created to make net zero carbon new build and retrofit more accessible for all building professionals, and is also relevant to self-builders, planning officers and other housing professionals. Although it can be used by homeowners, it is aimed at those who already have some knowledge or experience of construction. The primary focus is on small to medium scale housing projects, but the principles are generally applicable to projects of any scale. It covers all stages of building design and construction, including maintenance and operation. As our chairman has already mentioned, today is Suffolk Day, and yet again we have had the perfect midsummer's day for it. This year it is particularly special, not just because we can enjoy it fully for the first time in 3 years, but also because it is part of the ongoing Festival of Suffolk, the county's own special celebration of Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee year. And finally, I just want to mention 2 of our SLT who will be leaving us soon. I know Jan will be saying a few words about Gavin later, but first I'd like to say we will miss his professionalism and hard work. He has built a great team in what is a very large and complex housing service. Yesterday's excellent all-member briefing has given us all a great insight into what he has achieved. So thank you, Gavin. Cass too will be sorely missed. The Environment Service is also wide-ranging and complex, made more so with all the new work we're doing as we face the climate change and biodiversity challenges. Her enthusiasm and humour have made working with her a sheer delight. I think I speak on everyone's behalf in saying that we will miss them both greatly and wish them the very best for their new challenges at Ipswich Borough Council and East Suffolk Council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. As you said, Councillor Osborne will be mentioning a few words later, but Councillor Malvesi and Councillor Gould would like to say a few words. Councillor Malvesi, would you like to start?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As you said earlier, our office has and support in navigating the myriad issues facing climate change and biodiversity. She's been invaluable, helping BDC become a leader in the country for its achievements. So I'd like you all to join me with a very big vote of thanks.
That's a goal.
Thank you. And I just felt that I had to say something as well, Cass. Not that I had to, but I wanted to. As one of the new cabinet members, it was so reassuring for one of the first people I spoke to be Cass. And I knew that you are the go-to person in your words, and it reassured me. It gave me the confidence to be sitting here, really. So thank you very much. And, well, our loss will be there again, won't it? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to add my thanks also to both of you. Let's proceed with the agenda now. Item 5, to receive notifications of petitions in accordance with council procedure rules?
Thank you, Chair. None received.
Thank you. Item 6, questions by the public in accordance with council procedure rules. I refer you to the question in the tabled papers. I would like to invite Mr. Riley to ask his question. Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I'd like to say how nice it is to appear before you for the first time. And it's good to see you, Catherine. Welcome. And as always, when one poses a question here, I reserve the right to ask a supplementary. So my question is a very simple one, and it refers to the Corks Lane redevelopment. And it says, as you can read, what possible justification is there for a £9,000 a month to be spent every month on security for the properties? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Mr. Riley. The justification is simply to protect the premises. It has been necessary to have 24/7 security in operation at Courts Lane in Hadley due to the level of break-ins and antisocial behaviour that was occurring at the vacant site. I'm sure you will agree that we couldn't leave it unattended. The security presence on site has reduced this activity. It has protected the listed buildings from damage and vandalism and reduced the impact of any antisocial behaviour on the immediate neighbours and community. Security will be provided by our contractors as part of the development once the works commence on site in August.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Mr. Riley, I understand you have a supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, thank you for your answer. It really is as I expected. So, your answer to my question displays a complete ignorance of what is needed to be leader of this council. You dare to bring forward a multi-million-pound proposal with the prospect that it might break even or incur a small loss. The first rule of stewardship is that you must regard spending residents' monies as if they were your own.
Councillor Riley, have you got a question, please?
I appreciate your interruption. It's a preamble to get into my question.
Could you please make it a short question and relevant to your first?
Indeed, it shall be there. So there we are. So my supplementary question is this, having looked at this project. If Babergh is not making money out of the project, who is?
Councillor Ward, would you like to answer that now?
Yeah, I would actually. Mr. Riley, you said that we'll break even or make a slight loss. We have never, Babergh has never said that. The only person who said that, actually, perversely, is Councillor Dawson on the radio just over a week ago. I have always said, this council has always said, we would break even or make a profit. The fact that you attributed that to me on the radio was actually slanderous, but we won't go there. So, break even or make a profit. More likely to
order,
make a
please.
profit. More likely to make a profit. So,
No interruptions. No interruptions, thank you. If you're going to interrupt, I'll have to have you removed from the room, please. Can you not interrupt, please?
So we are redeveloping the site. We will break even or make a profit, more likely the latter. It's a project which has been delayed, unfortunately, but we're finally in a position to make progress with it, and indeed, it will allow me to honour a commitment that I and my colleagues opposite made in our manifesto in 2019.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, item 7.
Madam Chairman, can I have a point of order? May I have a point of order, please?
Can I see what it is first, please?
Pardon?
Can I hear what it is, please?
Yes, I would like an apology from both Councillor Ward and Councillor Arthey for laughing at the member of public. Thank you.
I can't say I noticed such laughter. Really, this has got nothing to do with being a point of order anyway. We can look at the films at a later stage, and if an apology is deemed necessary, we will look at the films first. Okay, thank you. Item 7, questions by councillors in accordance with council procedure rules.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Item 8, paper BC 22-7, the development of the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan. I would like to invite Councillor Jan Osborne to introduce paper BC 22-7. Thank you, Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and welcome back also. It's nice to see you up there. I am pleased to introduce report BC 22-7. Typically, a Housing Revenue Account Business Plan sets out the priorities, plans and actions for council housing over the next 30 years. Our HRA business plan was last revised in May 2017. Therefore, it is pertinent that after 5 years, a fundamental review of the plan and its priorities take place. The purpose of such plans is to show that we can maintain our existing housing assets and deliver a quality customer-focused service, as well as improve homes and neighbourhoods, whilst supporting and endeavouring to achieve the visions of the organisation's key strategies. An effective HRA business plan has become even more crucial since central government announced the reform of the rules governing local authority housing finance and the introduction of the self-financing system a decade ago. Members may recall that last year they were invited and consulted on what they saw were the emerging priorities when developing the HRA business plan. This included surveys and a focus group. Whilst in January this year, a paper was presented to full council on the progress being made to develop this plan and what the guiding principles of the plan would be. Then in May, we held an all-member briefing on the HRA business plan, for which we have produced a frequently asked questions in response to members' questions. And yesterday this was followed by an excellent briefing on the whole of the housing service, which was very well attended by members. I am pleased to promote the key aims of the plan, which include increasing the stock of social housing owned by the HRA through an ambitious development programme, including an average up to 65 new homes each year for the next 6 years. Developing new homes that are built to the highest standard, contributing to the Council's effort to ensure carbon neutrality, including an affordable housing strategy, a new build design guide and technical specification. Improving the quality of existing homes and communal areas and reduce the carbon footprint of existing council homes through investment in assets, community-led regeneration and working with communities and individuals, including the investment of more than £16 million to ensure every home meets EPC C standard by 2030. Ensuring that our homes and the management of them maintain and improve well-being outcomes for individuals, families and communities alongside other council services and partners. Making sure the HRA business plan continues to continuously remain financially viable and sustainable. It is vital that the HRA has a balanced financial plan that repays its debt within a reasonable period of time. Therefore, we can currently afford to build 65 new homes for each of the next 6 years. Future iterations of the HRA business plan and reviews in subsequent years will determine the number that the Council can then afford to build in year 7, 8 and onwards. The exact number that we can build in year 7 and onwards will be dependent on continuously reviewing the HRA finances nearer that time on an annual basis and accounting for changes that cannot be predicted today. For example, further rises and falls in income and expenditure. The plan is focused on 7 main priorities, which are tackling and adapting to climate change, developing new council housing, investing in our current homes, involving our tenants in the running of the housing services, improving the services that we provide to our tenants, improving the neighbourhoods that we manage, and implementing digital transformation. Inevitably, there will be challenges ahead, including maximising our income, which by 2025-26 will be as much as 21.6 million per year, as well as being efficient and delivering value for money in our expenditure, which by 25-26 will include having invested more than 17 million on repairs to council homes, more than 30 million on capital improvements to existing homes, more than 45 million on investing in new homes, as well as 26 million of additional borrowing. Today you have the report and final version of the plan in front of you, which provides understanding of the revised HRA business plan and its aims and objectives prior to it being presented to Cabinet in July for approval. Councillors, although a recommendation to note the approach to developing the HRA business plan has been included in the covering report before you today, I will not be moving that recommendation. This is because the monitoring officer has clarified that it is not necessary to vote on a motion to simply note. The Council is being asked tonight to comment on the HRA business plan for 22 to 2052. These comments will be considered by the Cabinet before we take a decision to approve the final version of the plan in July. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Now, with your permission, before I sit down, I'd like to say a few words about our Assistant Director of Housing, Gavin Fisk, as this will be his last full council meeting before he leaves for Pastors New in July. Gavin has now been with the council for many years and is homegrown. In that time, we have all grown to admire and respect his devotion to his role, including that to our residents, and the support he has always given to his team and to members. He has always been ahead of the game and proactive in his responses. His team will miss him, members will miss him, and I will certainly miss him. So thank you, Gavin, and all the best in your new role. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. I'll just read out the recommendation and then I'll call for questions and comments. So the recommendation is... Oh, so we're just noting it. So I'd like to ask the room if there are any, ask Councillor if you have any questions or comments. Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I have a question for the Independent Cabinet Member for Housing, Jan Osborne. When will we deliver? You state on pages 24, paragraph 4.8, what will our plans deliver? Page 26, 4.26, improve the existing car parking provisions in our areas. Page 31, acknowledges 81% of residents are unhappy. Pages 34 and 69, where is the word priorities for car park and reaction? And when will you deliver something? Thank you.
Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Beer, for your question. We are actually already delivering. On parking, there is no easy solution. You know, we've got a real problem where a lot of our houses are 60s, 70s built. People didn't even have a car, let alone one car or two cars. So in regards to parking, there is no easy solution, but it is being looked at. We need to work with Suffolk County Council, so maybe probably coming to you for some solutions as well on that one, and some finance possibly as well. So we are moving on that one. A lot of work is taking place behind the scenes to address that. Already we've been issuing letters to people where they're parking on grass verges that they shouldn't have been parking on, to make sure that they remove their car, otherwise we take enforcement notice. So that is happening. We've also got a little tag that we've ordered, we haven't got them yet, that we're going to put on cars where they're inappropriately parked, so we can do that as well. So we are delivering on that. In regards to, also again on parking, as you know, we've been doing a garage review, which has been taken quite some time because of COVID. It was put on the back burner. However, it would appear that some of the sites that we thought were suitable for future development actually aren't going to be suitable for future development. They're not going to be financially viable, but there'll be a report on that coming to Cabinet in September with much more details on that. But what we're thinking of is there again with parking, it would be more appropriate on some cases to try and remove the garages and provide extra parking. So there is a lot of work going on. In regards to antisocial behaviour, which is safer neighbourhoods, and all these priorities, they're all identified as a priority within the HRA business plan. A lot of work is going on with antisocial behaviour. Again, as great partnership working with the police. We never used to have such great partnership working, but we've now got that. With Suffolk County Council, there's a lot of work going on there in regards to antisocial behaviour. The Mental Health Trust, we're working with them as well. So again, in the background, there's a lot of work going on. Now, I'm always happy to sit down and have meetings with councillors, answer to emails if you want to know the work that's being done, but I don't want to bombard you with information of all the work that's being done. I'm kept really busy, officers are kept really busy. But if you want meetings, I'm more than happy to do that so I can show you the progress that we're making. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yes, okay, Councillor Beers.
Thank
Is
you,
it
Madam
related
Chairman.
to this last question?
Very quickly, related to that. Well, I would appreciate much more information from you, keeping us informed on these parking issues. As you know, I've been on about it to you and others for years, and so has other people. And you haven't been keeping us all informed. You may be doing all this behind the scenes, but we need to know what's happening in our areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beer. Councillor Hinton, you're next.
Yep, sorry. Thank you, Madam Chairman. A couple of quick points. Firstly, on page 35 of the council papers, it talks about financial assumptions, rents increasing by 4.1% in April 2022. Well, we know there was a bit of a mix-up there, and it wasn't April that things were happening. But further down the page, it talks about scenario 5, effects for 1-year rent freeze in 22-23. Which is it? Have we got a rent freeze or have we not? That was the first question. And the second one refers to a bit later on. There is no, within the environmental measures, etc., there is no mention of solar panels, which obviously will generate the electricity to help offset the costs of these air source heat pumps that are proposed. And also, there's nothing about the location of where these council houses are going to be built, because we know, as being a member from a rural area, we get a lot of houses built in rural areas with no services and facilities to support them. And obviously people who want affordable housing from us are probably more in need of that support than anybody else. I have several other small points, but rather than take up all the time here, I will send an email across to the housing team, and I'm sure they can answer them.
Thank you, Councillor Hinton. Councillor Osborne, would you like to answer those?
Yeah, first of all, if I can just come back on Councillor Beer's last comment. We actually had an excellent briefing yesterday that gave a real thorough update on what we've done over the last 12 months and where we're going for the next 12 months. So that for any members that didn't attend that briefing, it was recorded. So I would advise you to sit in and listen to it. It was a very, very comprehensive presentation, and I can see members around me are shaking their heads. They were really nodding their heads, rather. They were very pleased with that presentation. To respond to Councillor Hinton, on the rent freeze that he refers to, we don't know. To be honest, with the legislation, we have a feeling that the government may do a rent freeze. They may even do a rent reduction because of the cost of living crisis. We don't know. So we need to watch this space. But that's all been taken account of in the HRA. I don't know if Gavin would like to respond to that one in more detail.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Osborne. I'm sure I get the chance to speak several times this evening in response to questions, but just before I respond to that question, thank you for the kind comments earlier. They were very kind. 16 years working for Babergh and then Babergh Mid-Suffolk as organisations, and I've seen the organisations, both organisations evolve, improve and develop. So I know Babergh and Mid-Suffolk are identified as fantastic organisations by current workforce, by people that I talk to in the sector, a wide range of people, and that's truly down to the forward-thinking and innovative approach that you as members have delivered. So just if I don't get the opportunity, if I can just take this opportunity to wish every member, every officer and every resident every success in the future. In response to the question from Councillor Hinton, solar PV, yes, it is going to be a key conduit for improving the energy performance of existing homes. It's testament to members that in 2014, 2015, you made the decision to invest in solar PV some 7-8 years ago and installed it on more than 2,000 council houses. That will progress and you will see additional solar PV installed in future years. In relation to the rent freeze, I apologise. In terms of the papers, there is some confusion. This is because some of the scenario work that we were doing last year, and then we brought it forward and was doing it this year. So, for example, if you turn or you looked at page 43, that scenario 2, was looking at a potential rent freeze next year, 23-24. So it looks at what the impact of any rent freeze is. Of course, it's the decision of the council in terms of February next year, what decision is made in terms of rents. And then just to feed back on some of the other points made already, if I can, and just to build on what Councillor Osborne's already said. We've got a neighbourhood strategy coming forward over the next 6 months. We expect that to set the direction of travel for how estates will be managed. We've already developed a neighbourhoods team in recent years, and they're doing fantastic work inspecting our estates and ensuring that they're up to standards. We have a new tenant engagement strategy coming forward in October this year. We've begun to introduce estate walkabouts. There was one last week by officers to look at problems raised by concerned residents. We have an action plan that we've developed in recent weeks in response to tenant survey results that you see in the report in front of you. So there is lots of work going on. In Touch in Tune is an all-member, all-staff briefing that we produce at least on a monthly basis. So I'll make sure that officers are feeding in and reporting on and promoting some of that positive work in those channels as and when appropriate. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Malvisi, you had a question?
No, I'm deciding against.
Thank you. Councillor Busby, you were next. Did you have a question?
No, I'm just going to point out that all the housing briefing is so if you want to know anything about that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ward, I had you down for a question, or have you not got a question now?
No, thanks for that, Chairman. Just a few things. I'm pleased that we've had some clarity on the likely rent increases and the possibility of a freeze at some point, because again on page 35 it does talk about rent increases of CPI plus 1% over the next few years, and we all know CPI is currently 11%, so annual rent increases of 12% are going to be quite significant and unbearable for most people. The other thing I just wanted to mention, we talk about building 65 houses a year for the next 5 or 6 years. Clearly, we've got to go beyond that, because we've got numbers for social and affordable housing outlined in the joint local plan over the 18-year period of the joint local plan, and that will require us and other registered providers to deliver a lot more than that over the period. So clearly we're going to need to review that after the 5 years and build beyond that. But the last point I just wanted to mention, the plan talks about the Building Safety Bill. That received royal assent in April. It's now the Building Safety Act. I know that's a slightly pedantic point, but I think we probably need to update that. The other thing also that we really need to refer to make sure that the plan does address will be the implications of the Social Housing Regulation Bill, which is going to come before Parliament soon. So that's all, Madam Chairman. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Ayres, did you have a question? No, but you can make comments as well. It's
Yes,
questions and
thank you,
comments.
Chair.
It's questions and comments. Sorry, Councillor Ayres, I believe you.
Oh, I'm down as the wrong person.
No, Councillor
mind.
Ayres, you're next.
Yeah. To the report. I'm a little concerned, particularly with the people in my ward, and page 27 on the digital transformation, particularly point 434.
about supporting tenants with skills and tools to embrace the digital methods and all the stuff that will go to help you. However, 20% of these people cannot use a computer or a laptop, and that's one need that we really need to address. So how are we going to do that? East Suffolk provided some little laptop things for them. So I just wondered, what are we going to do for those really important 20% of residents? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Ayres. Yeah, obviously, as we have done all the way through, we will continue to support those residents that don't have access to a PC. It's just that the use of the system is digital transformation is actually taking off, and a high percentage of people now use it. For example, benefit claimants, I think it's 98% of benefit claims are done online. So there is a huge take-up for it. So that's why we have to be prepared to be able to move forward with it. But of course, that percentage that you've quoted, Councillor Ayres, of course we'll continue to support them in the same way that we have done previously. So that we won't be taking that choice away from them, we're just preparing so that we're ready, planned, things in place so that we can meet the demands and the challenges that's coming forward.
Thank you very much. Yes, a lot of those that maybe do go online is because they're queuing in the library because we only have the access point open for 10.5 hours a week, which is a problem in Sudbury. And so they are maybe going online, but with the help of other people, or going into the library. So I don't think they're doing it independently. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Oh, no, sorry. It's our officer who's going to talk first.
Sorry, Chair. I just wanted to just add to Councillor Osborne's comment. We are embarking on digital skills training for some of our tenants. Digital skills training in our sheltered schemes will commence within the next month, and that's in partnership with Sam Lake and colleagues outside of the organisation. So we're trialling digital skills training amongst our sheltered housing residents. We've also been talking about supporting some of those that are moving into temporary accommodation without those skills to enable them to develop as they move through temporary accommodation and into their own housing. So we'll be able to see some of the results of that in the forthcoming months.
I've got a comment following on Councillor Ward. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. You say on page, let me put the glasses on. Unfortunately, it's getting old. You say on page 26, 4.23, we'll learn from every complaint that we get. Well, I think that's a bit of a joke, because we certainly don't. Page 31, item 9, consultation, paragraph 9.7. You say that 87% of tenants are unhappy with us. That's because we've failed to deliver in their areas. Appendix A, page 58. This is a good one. Reducing grass cutting. Well, you'll get no brownie points for that. The public out there already figures the poor service you're delivering, and now you say you want to cut it yet again. Page 63. Improvements and remodelling of our estates. When? Well, you said that's underway. Page 64, hold us to account. Well, somebody should be taking responsibility and being held to account for not delivering. Page 77, I think there is only one mention about antisocial behaviour in a one line. And I hope that you include the neighbours as victims, because they're certainly the ones that suffer who live near the antisocial behaviour that goes on. Members, you don't seem to understand that our tenants will not give up their cars. What they need us to do is to deliver car parking spaces on our estates. As you know, I've been campaigning for 7 years along with others. You have done nothing but talk and more talking. There's no action going on. Our residents park in unofficial spaces near their homes at the moment for safety reasons. Also, residents have to drive to work, to schools, to shops, leisure centres, the post office, hospitals, and doctors' surgeries. Mind you, the new doctor's surgery in Sudbury, I hear a rumour that the doctors can't get financial support. So let's hope that means that the Great Cornard doctor's surgery will remain open, so my residents in Cornard can continue to walk to the Cornard surgery. There, that should please you, my Green colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne.
I won't answer all those because I think some of them I'd answered before. Regards to the grass cutting, my colleagues here would most probably be able to answer that better than me. But in the biodiversity plan, we make it very clear that we will do less grass cutting. And I'm getting calls from residents that are actually saying, well done for what you're doing with the grass cutting, because what they're doing is where there's an area of wild flowers or wild plants, instead of cutting that down and just leaving it, cutting it and leaving it, they've actually been putting footpaths through to leave it, and it looks really nice. Sorry, Councillor Beer, but there's a mixed view on this one, and that's the view of that one. In regards to the delivery, you're referring again, and I will refer you back to the presentation that was given yesterday, where it was very clear the Housing Service have delivered a lot over the last 12 months and where they're planning to go over the next 12 months. So I really would suggest you have a look at that recording, because it will answer a lot of the questions that you've just referred to.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Melanie Barrett.
Councillor Osborne, you talk about financial sustainability earlier, but I am concerned about the proposal and the number of new council-owned houses increasing each year by 65. In fact, John Ward has just mentioned a higher figure than that. This is an 18% increase. So the impact of that will be increased maintenance costs, increased management costs by 18%. I don't know if that's already in the figure there. Just a moment. Can you confirm that measures available to councils to ask residents to renew their tenancy agreement after the 5 years tenancy agreement has lapsed for certain of your tenants is to be better able to offer council properties to those in the priority category need? Is this actually used by this council to good effect, so that you don't always have to increase your properties year on year? You have got some churn, so that you can always address those on the waiting list.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Would you like to answer that, Councillor Osborne?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm rather surprised that a councillor isn't welcoming the fact that we're going to build or acquire 65 and possibly more new homes for people that are in desperate need of a roof over their head. I find that rather strange. The reason for the maintenance, no, they won't cost us much more on maintenance. The maintenance costs are very high because, as I said previously to Councillor Beer's question, was that we have a high proportion of properties that are 60s, 70s. If you built them now, they'd never have been allowed to be built, let's be honest. And they need an awful lot of maintenance done to them. With new properties, if they're built in the right way, and that's where the design comes into its own, hopefully that will reduce the maintenance costs. But all that has been taken into account. And as we've said, that's over the 5-year period with the 65 per year. We will review it again in 5 years, so we will look at those maintenance costs to see if they are increasing. But I think it's good news, don't you, that we're going to be building 65 plus more homes per year.
Thank you. Councillor Dawson.
Yes, if I just ask Councillor Osborne, I was going to ask you firstly, it might be related...
Sorry, Councillor Dawson. There was a question on the tenancy agreement that perhaps I could ask our Gavin to come in and answer, please. Sorry, Councillor.
Okay, Gavin. Sorry, I'll come back to you in a moment, Councillor Dawson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Barrett, for the question. Just in relation to, I think, what you were describing with fixed-term tenancies, where a tenant may have a tenancy for a time limit period, perhaps 5 years. We, Babergh Babergh and Mid-Suffolk District Councils have never adopted such a policy to provide fixed-term tenancies. Many social housing providers that have adopted fixed-term tenancies since the government gave permission have actually moved away from it and moved back to secure tenancies. I think one of the challenges is that fundamentally there's not a significant change in a person's lifestyle and abilities to move from social housing within 5 years. So secure tenancies are what we provide, and that gives any tenant the opportunity to stay in that property for their lifetime, subject to obviously not breaching the terms of the tenancy. But certainly making best use of our stock and having conversations with tenants where they may be overcrowding or under-occupying the property, I think is a practical step that we want to take going forward. So just in regards to that, and just in terms of an earlier point in relation to management and maintaining complaints, we actually have a complaints task force in the housing service which reviews every complaint and issues a quarterly report on the performance of the housing service in relation to complaints. So how many complaints of what type, what lessons have we learned, what have we changed in response. So I'm happy if members aren't aware of that report to ensure that that's shared more broadly on a quarterly basis, because you'll see the improvements that are being made to the service as a direct result of complaints. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dawson.
Can I just finish my point, please? Because I've just got something to follow up.
Following up on what's just said, okay.
Yes. That's interesting to hear. There is an inherited rights, I think, with the tenancy of council properties. Would it not be a halfway house to adopt a measure so that those tenancies are handed back to the council at that point, if you aren't going to adopt the available 5-year tenancy, fixed-term tenancies that you talk about? I mean, because I understand that people can pass their tenancies on to their children, which ties up that tenancy for so many years and prevents anyone in perhaps greater need having that property.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett and Chair. Yes, what you're describing is a succession. So every council tenant has the right to legally a succession within their tenancy. Only one, should I add, in terms of those rights. Typically, when a tenancy is succeeded, we will work with that individual. It's a succession to the tenancy, not to the property. So, for example, there are cases where maybe one single son or daughter is succeeding to a 3-bedroom house. That's totally nonsensical for them to stay there for so many reasons, none least the cost of maintaining that property. So we will work with those individuals to find them more suitable accommodation appropriate to their needs. I know when succession occurs and when, sadly, individuals are found in this position, it can cause a lot of concern. And I know in terms of my mailbag, many of them are fire members who are concerned about the individuals. So we really take a really positive, proactive approach to supporting those individuals, providing a level of hand-holding, particularly in response to the fact that they've just lost and suffered a bereavement, but we maximise that. What we can't prevent, and legally, there can only be one succession, so there can't be multiple successions, and in those circumstances, we'd look to recover the property. That said, if a person's in need of housing, obviously, they would need to follow the route through housing solutions in regards to alternative accommodation.
Thank you, Gavin. Councillor Dawson.
Yes, sorry, I've got 2 questions, actually. The first one is to Councillor Osborne. At the bottom of page 44, your report talks about the introduction of additional zero carbon works. Scenario 1 exposes the limits of the HRA Council. And then you go on to say when any freeze of rent, scenario 2 would require the authority to borrow more to compensate for this loss of income. And then at present, the authority struggles to deliver new homes and zero carbon investment. But on the other hand, you're talking about building 65 homes. So that was the first part of the question. If you could provide some clarity on that, because it's just really very confusing what you're saying, what's in the report. And the second one is, you've talked about a freeze of rents in 22 to 23. And earlier in your report, on page 38, there's a dip in the balances in the capital programme for 2022-23. Is that because you're introducing service charges and applying rent flexibility? I'm not quite sure whether they're related or not. What you're trying to say here exactly.
Yes, Gavin, could you answer that, please?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Councillor Dawson. I'll try and interpret what you're saying. If I've got it wrong, then please correct me and point me in the right direction. In regards to the scenarios, the first scenario that is in the document was in relation to the investment to bring all of our social housing up to a zero carbon standard. So in addition to meeting EPCC by 2030, which has been built into the baseline of the plan and will cost the council in excess of 15 million plus. This was looking at retrofit measures that would take us to zero carbon. And you'll see at the start of the scenario, I think it describes a retrofit cost of 24k per property. So in excess of 91 million pounds to bring all properties up to that standard. That's where there's challenges in terms of the plan and being able to invest that level of investment in homes. And naturally, in regards to existing council housing, there will be many homes that we can just never reach that zero carbon measure because it would cost more in terms of cost and carbon to remove it than to reach that level. And that's where we'll need to flex and change and adapt our approach in terms of the type of accommodation, type of property, and whether or not it's a property that we might want to look to dispose of or use in an alternative way. So that was the scenario in regards to that, and then everything else that we are trying to deliver. So clearly there's a challenge there. What I would add is that when developing the business plan and developing these scenarios, what we haven't assumed is any additional grant, government grant, or ability to access things like the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. Clearly those funds are out there, and the work that we've done with the Energy Saving Trust puts us in a really good position to apply for those funds going forward. But clearly it's a lottery as to whether or not we'll be successful, and we couldn't account for a level of grant per property because that would be nonsensical and not financially savvy. So whilst it really struggles in terms of the business plan to provide that, there is the opportunity to look at new funding as and when it becomes available, and that might reduce our dependency in terms of that contribution of 90 plus million to reach that level. But clearly we'll continue to monitor the stock on a regular basis. And then regarding service charging, so there is a paper coming to Cabinet in July that talks about a rent and service charge policy and the potential introduction of additional service charges to improve the standards of accommodation and the environment around those homes for residents. So that policy will be coming forward. That's a decision for Cabinet to make. If the decision is to start to begin to introduce more service charging, then you'll see that in terms of future years and future income lines in terms of where that might be recovered for services that are currently costing the HRA. In terms of rent flexibility is a means of housing revenue accounts generating more income, up to 105% of income. But in the rent and service charge policy that's coming forward in July, the proposal is that we won't use rent flexibility as a blanket tool to generate more income. It is potentially something that you as members and as a council might want to consider in the future, but I think my conversations with portfolio order for housing, rent flexibility and a blanket policy to use rent flexibility just wouldn't be appropriate in today's world, particularly with the cost of living crisis. So maybe something that could be used in the future to generate more income.
Councillor Dawson, you had another
Yes,
question
so
or
if I
comment?
could come back then. So am I correct in understanding that this is being introduced as service charges? And it does say here quite clearly when it will be appropriate, we can deliver them. But are we doing that because are we doing the rent freeze and therefore introducing this policy, and that's why we're giving a rent freeze?
So the rent freeze was just a scenario. You may recall, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but when we sat in this room in February debating any rent increase for this financial year, there was a table, and it's the cumulative effect of no rent increase or any rent freeze, because it's not just the cost to the HRA for that 1 year, it's the cumulative effect in future years, and that clearly does have an impact on the overall plan when you're looking at income and expenditure over 30 years. So that's a decision to be made in the future. We just looked at a scenario around rent freeze to see what impact it had on the business plan. We're not proposing any rent freeze, we're just testing the plan in terms of what it might do.
Thank you. Councillor McCraw.
That's okay, I'll use this one. My apologies, Madam Chair, thank you very much. I have a mixture of questions and a possible comment. So I'd like to ask Gavin Fisk if you can just help me here. The beginning of the paper states that this is a development of the HRA business plan adopted in 2017, 5 years ago. So, and it's if you like, an update and an adaptation. Can I ask if the fundamental drive of this and its overarching aims are similar to that one adopted by the Council in 2017?
So I would personally say no. I wasn't involved in the development of the previous HRA business plan. It was obviously produced more than 5 years ago, and I think the situation that the council found itself in at that time, it was about trying to save money and to create efficiencies. We were facing a period of prolonged rent freeze, and clearly that was having a significant impact on the plan. I think the plan that you have in front of you today is about ambition and is about development in terms of the housing service, building on the sound foundations that I hope that have been built over the last 5 years, but then really taking that HRA business plan forward. 65 new homes every year for the next six years is hugely ambitious for the authority and should be well received.
Thank you, that's very helpful, because I think it's important to establish that there are differences, and I'm probably going to ask Councillor Osborne to provide a little bit of a summary of those differences. Now, from my recollection, and I'm only going on my recollection, at the time, 2017, I was relatively new in the council, but not that new, and we didn't have this ambition. We didn't have a developed plan. Now, what we're talking about here today is an HRA plan. It's going on to the year 2052. And we've had a lot of comment on minor bits and pieces here and there, which obviously we deal with all the time, grass cutting, parking. Those are dealt with in other policy areas. They're not necessarily part of an HRA, which is a high-level, overarching document to provide us with a structure to fulfill the ambitions that we have. And nitpicking, and I have to say that's all I seem to have heard today, about every single aspect. Well, HRA does deal with a lot.
I object, Madam Chairman, to you being accused of nitpicking.
Can you sit down, please,
Thank you.
Councillor? No one interrupted you.
I've said the word because I think it's an appropriate one. Nitpicking is something that doesn't actually help us throw any light on this subject. The HRA is an important thing. There is ambition being described here. I would draw members' attention to the infographic, and this I would also draw to the attention of the general public. I'm trying to find the page. If somebody can get my screen to come down, it's in green, and it contains some useful bits and pieces. In 2017, none of the things on that infographic would have been true. They are now, because we're actually doing something. 20 or 30 years, this council didn't build any houses. The HRA could have been described as moribund. I know Councillor Hurren will tell me that a certain government made us buy back our own properties. I know it's something you still find rather annoying. I can understand why. However, we're not going to get you started, Bryn. That infographic you can find in green on page 49. I think that is the sort of thing that describes the content of this paper. And frankly, arguing around the houses, no pun intended, isn't getting us anywhere. This is a high-level document. All these things are contained within it, as they are in each of the individual policies that actually deal with the questions being raised from the other side. So I'd like to suggest that perhaps we could move to just approving this, or at least approving that it go forward to Cabinet, who will make the final decision.
We have a couple more councillors who wish to have questions or comments. Councillor Bosby.
I'll be very short. Look, this is a very ambitious and challenging plan. There are a lot of competing demands on our funds. Increasing houses means increasing rents, which means we have more money to help achieve our objectives. Hopefully in the first few years, if we're building new houses, we won't be spending a huge amount of money on the maintenance of those houses. So that, in fact, should help us. Look, I think Alistair's put it right. There's a lot of detail that's got to go into this. And we can't expect Jan and her team to come up with all the answers. We should be contributing as much as anybody to the problems in our particular areas. I mean, look, Peter, you've been a councillor for what, I don't know, 30 years possibly? And we want answers from you. You not just tell us the problems, tell us some of the solutions as well.
Come to Great Court and I'll take you round.
No, that's just going to tell me the problems again. I want the solutions. And we're all responsible for coming up with these ideas. Don't just rely on one person.
Thank you. Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to make a comment about retrofitting. Now, I understand retrofitting, working in isolation is extremely expensive. I've spoken to Gavin before about the Lewis model. Lewis Council have pooled resources with 6 other councils in their area, and together they've managed to pool a fund, £1 billion fund, which is allowing them to tackle 40,000 houses across the 7 councils. On this scale, they're getting huge economies of scale. They've set up a task force with experts from the industry, architects, and together it's bringing down the cost of the work. It's also, by keeping the economy localised with the supply chains in the local area, it's adding value and jobs to the local area. And as I said, I've mentioned this before to Gavin, I wondered if this is something we could look at working with our local councils.
Fine, thank you. Councillor Hurren.
Chairman, yes, thank you. Positive report, very positive. I think last time we had a report to this council, probably 2 meetings ago, I was quite critical about one thing, but I was glad that it wasn't in. It was about the windfall sites, and I did give you a bit of a bad time, didn't I, Gavin? But and then 2 weeks later, you announced you were leaving, so I hope they weren't connected. But no, I'm pleased that that isn't actually in this report. I'm thrilled that the climate change is sort of last finding fault, and the fact that we've declared a climate emergency, that's something that's more important than anything else, and with green issues. Car parking, well, it keeps coming back. I look to the future. In 10 years' time, hopefully there'll be a driverless people carrier come out to a development, pick up 12 people and take them to where they need to go. And I think umpteen car parking space is a bit old hat anyway. We do need to look to the future We cannot keep, there's more people, we need more houses, but we cannot keep clogging up everything with more and more cars. That cannot be the way forward, and it's a green disaster as well. So that's my view. We need to look in other directions for that. Thrilled that allotments are making a comeback. Allotments are fantastic. I have one in my village, and it's a meeting place. It's everything. If you've got an allotment or a set of allotments, oh goodness, they take the place of everything. Meeting, you don't need a nightclub. You can take beer. They really are the future. So, you know, I know I'm speaking humorously because I always do, but there's serious issues there. It does so much. So, thrilled that that's made the grade at last. And I think maybe instead of car parking, we should be concentrating on public transport, which is, oh God, it's nearly died. You know, it's serious. If you live in a semi-rural area or even some of the urban areas, it is dire. There's hardly a bus a day, and sometimes you can go somewhere and can't get back. I know we're not responsible for public transport. It is something we should be trying to encourage. The only things I worry about, Jan and Gavin, are the level of antisocial behaviour and the effect that if this government enacts the right to buy on housing association properties, that really will impact on what we do here and would be a terrible thing. We're still suffering from the Thatcher era with the right to buy on our council houses, and that is something I pray won't happen. But more party or elbow, a good report, much improved, and looking forward and not back. As Councillor Busby says, we must do that. So thank you both.
Thank you, Councillor Hurren. Councillor Simon Barrett.
Thank you. I do find it rather rich that Councillor McCraw is espousing the delights of extra building. The first time I met him was in his own village where he was trying to stop development in Brantham. But, you know, that's how things change. But anyway, so wanting some suggestions of how we can build more houses, well, I would suggest that Councillor Osborne looks at the standards of passive houses that have been put in the document as it's too excessive. We do not require passive houses. And actually, if you look at St Ed's has had passive houses and they're now empty. There's a block of passive houses, absolutely empty, can't be used. Doesn't have the ventilation, the tenants don't understand how to use it. It's a standard too far. We don't need it. Building regs as they are, and they're going up all the time, provide perfectly sound insulation for us to then put in the things like the heat pumps, etc. And the insulation is good. So why we are trying to go above that and have this supreme standard, which ultimately would not enable us to deliver the numbers that we require. And our actual delivery of houses, the 65, quite honestly, has been fantasy most of the time, because over the last number of years we've done in the sort of tens, and we've done very few. So what I would suggest, if you want a positive approach, Councillor Busby, because you obviously don't have any suggestions, because the fence that you sit on would not hold the weight, you probably need to look at reducing that standard, upping your numbers. That's how you're going to do it. That's a positive suggestion from this side, rather than the pettiness of Councillor McCaw.
Councillor Maybury, and this will be the last speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I did have a question, but, you know, might be nitpicking. But I might have a go. This is the first question, and then I'll make a couple of comments. Under page 31, under equality analysis, it says there are no equality and diversity implications. I would disagree. And the monitoring officer, I hope, is listening, because I always disagree sometime during the day or the evening. If you look further up under 9.8, it says digital surveys were the preferred method. However, this may be because the consultation exercise was digital, therefore those without digital access were not represented. So I think that there is an issue there with equality. So I hope that will be addressed. And the other point going on from that is, okay, we're going to teach 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds. I think, well, my dear husband did use a computer at the age of 80, but he certainly didn't at the age of 90. Sorry, is there a comment about my late husband? No? Thank you. But I would like to say that there may be older persons who would like to use a computer, but do they realise that they have to have broadband? And if things are tight for them with the cost of living, who is going to pay for the broadband connection? So we haven't actually looked at that, and that may be something that the housing team needs to look at in the future. Are we actually going to put that automatically into our new builds so our tenants have it as part of their contract? So that's the first. Now then, the comments that I would like to make, I'm sure Councillor Hurren would be delighted to know that there is a system of centralised cars where you have one car in a village or in a cul-de-sac or whatever you'd like to call it, and this car is loaned out to whoever would like to use it. So there's one car for however many properties. That may help you to understand what is going on. And very lastly, I would like to comment about the building of houses, the new modern ones, because it was my Homes for Life that actually turned things around, which is making those properties suitable for those things that you do not expect to happen to you in life. So a new build has the slope up to the front door, the wider doorway, the internal wider doorways for wheelchairs. And I do remember the opposition, was that from you, Gavin? I think it may well have been, that the developers would never ever agree. So I challenged that and I said I would go with whichever developers would like to the building suppliers and negotiate costs down for these particular items. Really funny, the next thing I knew, it was suddenly adopted and in the joint local plan. So there are ways around. Sorry? Oh, have I? Well, I think I've finished. So Homes for Life are the way to go. Thank you.
So, Councillor Ward, did you have a question, a comment or question? Because I'm trying to end it now.
Yeah, sorry, it's just a quick one, Madam Chairman. Councillor Barrett makes a valid point about not putting so much money into achieving standards at the expense of numbers of housing, but there's no reference to passive house standard in this document.
Not in this document, but in the other one.
So the aim is EPCC as a minimum, with a view to EPCA for a new build. But we don't. I agree. We don't want to build passive house standard for many reasons. But I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. In a moment, Councillor Osborne, I'd like to thank all councillors for their very helpful and constructive comments and debate here. I'd like now to return to Councillor Osborne, Jan Osborne, to see if there's any comments that you would like to add or sum up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, on Councillor Maybury's comment about our officer Gavin, there's no way Gavin would ever not take on a suggestion from a councillor. So she's wrong there, I'm afraid, and I'm putting the record right on that one. On the passive housing that's referred to by Councillor Barrett and Bury St Edmunds, I think they were built some time ago, so obviously we've moved on a lot with the materials that we use. So hopefully, when we build houses, we will learn from some of those mistakes from that one that's been Bury. So just to close, thank you, members, for your kind comments in most cases. I think this is an excellent document. A great deal of work has gone into putting this. I know Gavin's worked and his team have worked extremely hard on this, and it's really difficult because it's a document that changes day by day. You know, you put a document in place and then there'll be new legislation coming through or there'll be more challenges coming through, and suddenly you have to revisit the document again. So it's been a really hard, challenging piece of work. And I'm confident that this will deliver. We're already delivering. We delivered that presentation we had yesterday demonstrated how much we've delivered over the last 12 months. We will continue to deliver, and this document will help us in that way. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Agenda item number 9, BC 22.8, Overview and Scrutiny Committee Annual Report 2021-22. I would like to invite Councillor McLaren to introduce her report, which is for noting. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It seems a long time since the first people welcomed you back, but at this point I would like to welcome you back to the Council. On a personal note, we missed you as Vice Chair on Overview and Scrutiny, and you know, I am very pleased that you are well again. Thank you. So, Madam Chairman and members, I'm very happy to present the annual report on the work and recommendations of the Babergh Overview and Scrutiny Committee during 2021 to 2022. Members will note that the required statutory overview and scrutiny took place of the required services and functions. This year, the shared legal partnership came under scrutiny after a period of some years' absence. In the current national climate of uncertainty and financial upheaval, a common statement by the public, who are of course our residents, are saying someone should be held to account. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee offers that opportunity for the public to observe the Council, public bodies, or financially supported agencies being held to account in committee. It also provides members the chance to contribute to the process by bringing to committee areas and subjects that they feel need scrutiny. The committee will then scope that subject before recommending or not that it be included in the work plan. As elected members, we have a responsibility to those who elected us to prove that Council services and functions are fit for purpose, and that we have pursued all avenues to ensure that. This, I feel, is the function of Overview and Scrutiny. So thank you to all the members of the Babergh Overview and Scrutiny Committee who supported me over the past year, and I wish Councillor Hinton every success as Chairman in the coming year. I am therefore, Madam Chairman, requesting that members note this annual report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Councillor McLaren? Councillor Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, because it's altered and I don't know the answer, perhaps the monitoring officer will let me know whether I have to declare a couple of items, which is that, you know, I'm a director of Citizens Advice, and also that I am chairman of a traffic working party, but I have no voting rights on that. Do I need to declare those? No, so can I carry on with a question? Right, lovely, thank you very much. So my questions are, I'm trying to find the right page, so let's start with the shared legal service, which was reviewed in November 2021. There has been difficulties with this recently, with this service, in particular for my ward, where something's been outstanding for about 6 years. So I am asking if, or why, actually I'll ask why, when the shared legal service was reviewed, why it was only on monetary reasons and not actually on its work schedule and the, what shall I say, the accountability of their work. Do you want all the questions in one? Would you like all the questions together? No. Right. Try that one, thank you.
We were presented, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee requested, if you remember, a member of the public in a previous meeting that became inquorate because members left very quickly. It had been raised by a member of the public that he was concerned about the efficacy of the shared legal service. So we arranged a meeting to review that. In reviewing that, we were presented with a broad view and about the activity and the costs. But your specific question, I don't think was answered.
Councillor Maybury.
Thank you. If I may come back, perhaps I might suggest that overview and scrutiny have a look at that in the future. I'm sure I could. I'm quite good at that. Thank you. Thank you. There's two of us standing up. I'm sorry about that. Can I ask my next question?
A monitoring officer wants to make a comment.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a point as a matter of procedure and also as the Assistant Director with responsibility for legal, and that's just to say that overview and scrutiny wouldn't look into a single issue as you're raising, Councillor Maybury, so if there's been an issue with the service that's been received, I'm more than happy to speak to you directly on that and resolve that.
Councillor Maybury.
Thank you. Thank you for that, and I will send you an individual item, but it's the whole, what shall I say, it's the whole workload that I think needs looking at as well. Okay, thank you. Now my next question for overview and scrutiny is, and this is under the joint parking strategy, I was really surprised to see hospital car parks in that. Well, the only hospital car park that I can think of within Babergh would be the Sudbury Health Centre. So could you explain that, please?
When the subject, thank you, Councillor Maybury, when the subject of additional areas that may be considered under the parking strategy was raised, we were in a joint overview and scrutiny committee, and if I remember rightly, I can't quite remember, but I think it was a mid-Suffolk councillor that actually raised about hospital car parks. It was not a Babergh one. Remembering that these are joint overview and scrutiny reports and therefore reflect both councils, if that's helpful.
Is it a short one? Because there are other people who want to ask questions.
I've got lots of questions. I've done my homework. I'm not nitpicking. I've done my homework. To actually add to that, I think that is an issue with overview and scrutiny. When there are so many joint meetings that we can't actually get this pared down to just Babergh. But I was interested because I thought, oh, is there a new hospital arriving in the district that I knew nothing about, which would have been rather exciting. Anyway, so I'm now going to move on to the review of local citizens' advice, and I did have actually raised this before because on page 102, and it's talking about value added, and it says, Overview and Scrutiny Committee recommended to Cabinet that the funding was increased to aid the service, and it would be good if members were actually informed by how much, when, if this was index linked, and whether it was backdated, because this should have been done 2 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maybury. Well, the issue about increased funding, the recommendation actually came from me for Sudbury. And this was because during the pandemic, Sudbury had actually provided debt advice to Ipswich citizens' advice. So that was a recommendation for me. In terms of the index linking, that has been, and I've been advised by Councillor McCraw, that had been brought up at previous overview and scrutiny committees of the citizens' advice. So that is already under consideration at the moment. This will go to Cabinet. The paper has not been presented to Cabinet at the moment, for Cabinet to make a decision about the extra funding for Sudbury. Sudbury has had this as a token and a gesture under the cost of living paper that Sudbury will receive a 30% increase this year, which is coming out of the Wellbeing Reserve Fund. Okay, but it will be coming to Cabinet, that very question about the index linking, and also Cabinet has got to decide whether they want to approve an extra funding for the work that Sudbury is actually doing on behalf of the whole district.
Thank you. Councillor Melanie Barrett.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a general question about overview and scrutiny. We know how important it is to have strong scrutiny to balance the Cabinet. Do you think the call-in process is sufficient when the option can be removed by Cabinet, and when it actually does happen, it has no teeth whatsoever? Do we need to beef it up?
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. It must have been psychic, because I have actually brought with me the calling process, because I think there is some misunderstanding that came out of the last calling meeting that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee actually heard. When the request comes in for the call-in, there is, and it is heard, there is an assumption that there is a freedom of choice of the outcome. And today I have got the three options that are placed before the committee, and they have to make a decision. The first option that you can come as a result of the scrutiny is refer the matter back to the Cabinet for reconsideration, together with the observations of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and Cabinet will then take a final decision. But that decision, if it's referred on the first option, you cannot call it in again, which restricts your options. The second option is to seek the advice of the monitoring officer as to whether the decision is contrary to or not wholly in accordance with the policy framework or the budget, and if applicable, refer the matter to full council for a final decision. That is the second option. The third option is that the decision be upheld and implemented immediately. So, in the last call-in, which I know you're referring to, the monitoring officer actually advised us that option 2 was not available to the committee. So you had a choice in not being allowed to call it in again, or the third choice was that the decision be upheld and implemented immediately. And that was the choice that the committee were left to take. But I know you were not happy with the outcome.
Thank you. That was a clear answer. Councillor McLaren, have you got anything else to add? And did you want to sum up?
Well, I just would like to thank everybody. It is a hard... I mean, you will see in my report, Madam Chairman, that I was so surprised when I became the chairman that there's a lot of hard work, amazing amount of hard work undertaken by chairs, and well, you were a vice chair, undertaken by chairs and vice chairs, and lots of, and democratic services work really hard. And so, you know, my thanks to everybody that participated. I believe in overview and scrutiny. I think we should be holding people to account, and I think our residents do deserve that and expect that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. That report was for noting only. Item 10, BC 22-9, Overview and Scrutiny Committee Work Plan 2022-23. I would like to invite Councillor Hinton to introduce paper BC 22-9, which is for noting.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, this paper is for noting, but I would just like to draw members' attention to a couple of points within within the preamble for the report and the report itself. This is a document that is evolving all the time. It's not something that's set in tablets of stone. The work plan changes depending on what needs to be looked at. An example of that came through today when the report from the called the Information Bulletin from the Shared Legal Services Performance Monitoring has been delayed now until September, whereas it was going to be seen in July. So it's something that is constantly evolving. Within the papers in front of you, it states in 4.1, the role of the Babergh Overview and Scrutiny Committee is defined as having the key purposes of scrutinising the work of external stakeholders and service providers, holding the Cabinet to account, being the home of call-in, being the home of member call for action. I would like to add that it should also read the scrutiny of the way the Council provides services to the community, and that's without restriction. So in other words, all forms of services that the Council provides. Overview and Scrutiny has one chair and meets every month. Babergh and Mid-Suffolk District Councils conduct joint committees on a regular basis when similar topics have been deemed suitable to be scrutinised jointly. I think there's been a lot of these joint meetings where the influence of Mid-Suffolk has perhaps predominated, so I should be looking at that very, very carefully. Otherwise, as within Appendix A, there are the proposed topics so far, and I shall be meeting with officers to sit down and discuss a few other items that I would like to bring forward into the plan and see where we can put them. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hinton. Are there any questions for Councillor Hinton?
Yes, I'm glad to see that Councillor Hinton seems to have got a grip of what ONS is about. I'm really looking forward to working with him and having some positive outcomes and holding the Cabinet to account. So looking forward to working with you, John, as if you're a record of how you work on planning is anything to go by, it should be very interesting.
Thank you. In that case, thank you very much, Councillor Hinton. The report was for noting only. Item 11, BC 2210. Notice of key decision by general exception, exempt from call-in, taken by Cabinet in accordance with Part 2 of the Constitution. I would like to invite Councillor Ward to introduce this report, which is for noting.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Paper BC 2210 is a notice of a key decision by general exception taken recently by Cabinet and which was exempt from call-in. The Constitution requires that such decisions are reported to Council at the next ordinary meeting. The details of the notice are provided in Appendix A. It refers to Cabinet's decision to approve an increase in the debt threshold to enable the redevelopment of the former HQ site at Courts Lane, Hadley. It explains the necessity to award the contract before its expiry date and the consequential impact on prices had there been a delay in this. The recommendation at 2.1 is to note that this notice of a key decision by general exception has been reported now to Council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. That report was for noting only. Item 12, Councillor appointments. Are there any changes to placings? Item 13, motions on notice.
Thanks, Chair. None received.
In that case, I'll call an end to the meeting. The date of the next meeting is Tuesday, 19th of July, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. It's been very nice seeing you all again, councillors. Thank you for a very good meeting.